today's seminar, I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. At RMIT, we would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land on which the university stands. We respectfully acknowledge elders past, present and future. Well, today our speaker is Dr. Nicola Willand from the School of Property, Construction and Project Management. Nikki has an interest in the links among housing, energy, equity and health. Nikki's interdisciplinary research focuses on how housing outcomes are shared by the intersection of dwelling quality, householder practices and the structural, geographical and social context. Her multi-method research experience enables her to work at the nexus of the built environment, technological innovations in the energy transition and social research. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you, Nigel. I forgot I wrote this. I want this for my deck right now. Sounds good. Okay, because I come from a different school and not many people know me at GUS, I thought I'll just share a little bit of who I am and my research journey so far. So I'm an architect by background, and this is our house, a low energy house in Germany, so 20 years ago, and it's still quite cutting edge. But then we moved to Australia, and at some point I started doing my PhD. And the interesting thing about the low energy house was that I had a friend who said, whenever I come to your house, I don't have any allergies. And that really got me thinking, when is something good for the planet and when is it good for people as well? So my PhD was about residential energy efficiency and health. So energy efficiency in housing in Australia is measured in stars or indicated in stars. It's from 0 to 10, where 0 is the worst and 10 is the best. So if you live in Melbourne, you hardly need any heating or cooling if you have a 10-star home, and the minimum requirement at the moment is 6 stars. And then health, I was interested in psychological, physiological and social health. And I used social practices in this context, interested in how the materials of the house and people and health, how they all interact, and social practices according to Shove are sort of bound by the materials of building quality, the competence of householders, and then meanings as well. So that was my starting point. And warmth and coolth is really important when it comes to buildings, energy efficiency and health. And the Victorian government always says, well, higher star rated homes are warmer in winter and cooler in summer, and I really wanted to see if that was true. So I got a little bit of data from the CSIRO and used their data to test this relationship. And what you see here is the star rating on the x-axis and the average winter living room temperatures on the y-axis. And you see there's hardly a slope, and sort of the association is it's not there really. Really, it was warmer if people were spending a lot of money on electricity or gas, or if someone was home all the time. And, it wasn't the only indicator I looked at, but, it wasn't very convincing that higher star rated homes were going to be warmer in winter than lower star rated homes. And then I looked at summer, and you can see here there's a real slope happening. The problem is that it really means that higher star rated homes are warmer in summer too, rather than cooler in summer. So this was not really what we expected. And what I'm looking at here is I disaggregated the homes into sort of 3, 4, 5 and 6 star homes. So on the left, the diagram shows that all these homes had approximately the same temperature indoors, in association with outdoors. But then on the right, what you see is the half-hourly air conditioning usage, and you see that the 6-star homes need 4.5 times more electric cooling energy to get to the same temperature than the lower star rated homes. So obviously that's not intended by the regulator either. Coming to the main part of my PhD, I really wanted to see if better energy efficiency or energy retrofits would improve health. So what I did was a realist review. I was interested in what works rather than just numbers or just qualitative thing. So it's pragmatic. It's a mixed methods methodology, quite new though. And I found so there are pathways. So energy efficiency improvements can lead to better warmth in winter, and then better physiological health or greater satisfaction with the home, which then translates into social health. There wasn't a lot of evidence about the affordability pathway, so that you have lower fuel costs and that reduces stress and anxiety, because very often when people got a retrofit, they spent more on electricity and gas, but they were still happier. But then there was also the sort of unintended consequence that it could actually be worse for health over respiratory symptoms if the indoor air quality was compromised. I also disaggregated the kind of retrofits that people did, and I found that comprehensive refurbishment, so doing more, was not necessarily more effective, but even small-scale thermal retrofits, so insulation, draft proofing, or just a change of the heating system to a more efficient one, really had benefits. I also looked at the contextual mediators and moderators, because it wasn't very straightforward. As I said, people were spending more and were still happy afterwards. So it was a lot about who participated, how did they cope with with cold temperatures in winter, and what kind of ventilations they have. And most of these studies were in cold climate, so there was nothing about summer anyway. So my own the big part of my study was a mixed method study of a retrofit trial. I piggybacked on a low income energy efficiency program project by the Southeast Council's Climate Change Alliance. So they were trialing various things, but one of them was giving people retrofits. They recruited health and community care patients, so older people, usually on a low income. Started off with 30 households. So in the end, I had 16 in the intervention group, and then 13 left in the control group. And I was interested in what would happen. So, what happened to the energy usage? What about indoor temperatures and vapor pressure excess? And use statistical methods to look at this. But I also wanted to explain, why I could see outcomes in quantitative data and what really mattered and how this happened. And so that's why I was looking at practices. So the typical home was a brick veneer home, either centrally heated or with a room heater, and the typical householder was an older female owner-occupier. So the star rate on average 2.8, so really not that great, considering that new homes are built to 6 stars, and from the outside they didn't look like low income, so they were really neat homes. In the retrofit cohort, they got insulation and draft proofing mostly, and very few got a reverse cycle air conditioner. And that improvement in insulation, that actually improved the homes in the intervention group by 0.8 stars, and the draftiness was reduced by 25%. When it came to warmth, I didn't really see a big difference before and after, because people did things that I didn't really expect. So I didn't know that having a window open or closed was a question of interpretation, whereas this is open and this is closed. So, and what you see here is bedroom temperatures. So those people who had the window open, the retrofits didn't make a difference at all, whereas the people who had the window closed, it became a little bit warmer than in the second winter. So that was good. But temperatures were still below guidelines during the day and during the night. So those are thresholds set by the World Health Organization. So you can see that it was always far too cold in many, many of the homes, and the retrofits didn't really change that. I also found that some coping adaptation practices presented health risks. So those snakes, in front of doors to keep the living room warm, those are really tripping hazards for older people. unflued gas heaters, electric heater right next to a water source. You know, that's not really healthy either. What this shows is a little bit of the variation that I saw in amongst these householders. So on the x-axis, that's the change in daily mean living room temperature. And on the y-axis, it's the percentage change in mean daily heating energy that people consumed. So ideally, you would want all the retrofit people in that bottom green quarter. And you see there are only really 2 just making it. And lots of the green dots, which are the retrofit households, ended up in different quarters. And that was because they weren't really heating, you know, for energy efficiency or energy costs. They were heating for the sickest person in the house. So if someone had pneumonia in the follow-up here, you know, that when they were heating much more than before, although the person had emphysema, so they should have been heating anyway, or they felt colder, you know, older and colder. Within a year, there was a difference. Or the cold sensitive spouse passed away and then the wife stopped heating at all and hardly got out of bed. So I had all these other things that were really playing into heating practices. Coming to health, well, I realized that I was really naive. I didn't realize these older people have all these other comorbidities, that a little bit of better warmth or less costs wouldn't make much of a difference. So you see that, you know, not much changed, you know, a little bit, but, you know, hardly anything. And the biggest change that was that, you know, the people from the project and me, we were coming and talking to them because their friends and families were too busy or had died. And then I asked them what mattered. So what mattered for the participants were the gains in comfort and expected benefits and costs. So many didn't see that yet because the bill hadn't come in the second winter. I talked to them about, you know, how they used energy, but I didn't tell them what to do. But, you know, they switched on, and so there was a little bit of energy education going on. But they just love talking to me. Like 4 times a year, someone comes and is interested in the whole history. They just love that. They weren't very happy with some of the workmanship that happened in the house, and especially around the draft proofing. But there were incidental health benefits because before SECA put in the retrofits like draft proofing, they really made sure that there was no carbon dioxide, monoxide leaking from the gas heaters, and they empowered householders towards energy providers as well. So those things are not usually, you know, captured in these quantitative studies. And in the end, I came up with this whole system of how energy and health, energy efficiency and health and people work together in this whole system that goes round and round and round, which is really complex and complicated, and the context was really important as well. So when I did my PhD, there was this theme of justice and fairness going through, but, you know, I couldn't write it up in this thesis. So then afterwards, I wrote it up under the question, how was the freedom to heat to adequate temperatures and to afford energy enhanced or compromised? So I used the capability approach, which says that we should be looking at equality, not just in matters of income, but of what people are able to do or the freedoms to do things. And I found there were energy justice or injustice things happening at various scales of social relations within households, sort of, you know, husband and wife bickering all the time, or, you know, adult sons not being allowed to use the cooler in his room because he was unemployed. Householder energy retailer relations really important as well. They felt it wasn't fair. Social networks relations, and then relations to wider society as well. And then the HEAT project started, so the Household Energy Efficiency Transitions Program that is led by Ralph Horn, and I just happened to be a chief investigator there. And what I did there was I looked at retrofit subsidies in Victoria. I wanted to see if they created inequalities. So the Victorian Energy Upgrade Program, you get subsidies for all kinds of retrofits in your home. So it's not means tested, anyone can get it. And the outcomes are measured in these certificates, which are potential carbon emission reductions. And if there's no fuel switch happening, these VEECs actually mean cost savings as well. Most of these VEECs have been generated for lighting, so that was free. standby power controllers and shower hoses. All of you may have had one of these things installed in your homes for free. And I just wanted to see, you know, how they were distributed spatially. So across Victoria, there were these neighborhood effects, and most areas were just below the mid value, but interesting, you know, how there are these pockets. So that's the intensity per dwelling. Did a few things and calculations and found that the rates of rented and unoccupied dwellings predicted the VEECs generation intensity, especially in the metro region. And really what it seemed to say was, you know, looking at an area index, that renters in metropolitan Melbourne may have been at particular risk of missing out on retrofit subsidies. And that was a triple disadvantage, because renters are very often low income and live in poor quality housing. They've got limited access to retrofits because they're not allowed to do retrofits, they're not allowed to, you know, change much in their home, but they carry the burden of the cross-subsidization, because the energy companies who've got to pay for all these retrofit subsidies, they just take it back by making our unit prices higher. So, you know, the renters then were at a triple disadvantage, because they had to pay for the subsidies that rich people, owner-occupiers, were getting. You know, and then I said, you know, really this utilitarian equality, which is really about, you know, let's go for, you know, saving energy, saving carbon emissions, had these regressive outcomes. I also used the capability approach recently with Bhavna. Hi, Bhavna. I saw that you're here as well. And we looked at energy vulnerability policies and initiatives in Victoria, and just to see how equitable they were. And we found that, yes, so some of them actually give priority to struggling households, which is good, but everything is really centered around income and energy concessions. There's very little consideration of diversity. Things are not looked at holistically, and you know, some of these things are being regressive as well. You know, very little support for energy efficiency of homes, for example, which would be, you know, a positive loop, feedback loop. Also, after my PhD, I was fortunate enough to get this RMIT seed fund, because the retrofits worked so well with these HEC recipients. I thought, well, why don't we have energy efficiency assistance in the care at home system? Full stop. You can get rails and ramps for your house as a HEC recipient, but you can't get insulation, you can't get energy efficient heater. So I worked with two care providers, and we looked at how they did things. We did stakeholder interviews across health, energy, and social services, and we came up with this model. So integrating energy into care was pretty easy. If the government, and that's the federal government, wanted to do it, would be pretty easy to do. And, you know, people on the ground were only too happy because they were experiencing it, they were seeing it, they didn't know how to help. But I also found that we're not very good at looking at sort of at care and diversity and health when it comes to energy. That's all about the building and very technical, and not who actually lives in the building. And then following on from this, we got a Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation grant, which looked at tackling hidden energy vulnerability through collaborations between different sectors. And so in Victoria, if you're disconnected, then you're in energy poverty. If you're not paying, if you can't pay your bills and you call your energy retailer, you're put on a hardship program. That also could be then measured as being in energy poverty. But hidden energy vulnerability, hidden energy poverty is when people keep paying their bills and, you know, compromising on food or compromising on warmth, and that's hidden energy vulnerability. A lot of people are too proud to tell their family or, you know, their communities. So I was really interested in how do we find them and how do we help them. And, you know, there's a much larger group that is just transitioning in and out of heating inability in Victoria. So what we did is we talked to 34 households. So I don't know if Nushin is here. She did it with me, and Ralph was part of this as well. We talked to stakeholders from all these various professionals and just to know what they see and how they help. And we found there were quite a few methods of identifying people in hidden energy vulnerability just by talking to them or in these health assessment forms. But it was very sort of ad hoc, and then there was very little follow-on. There were a few models of collaborative service delivery, and they really ranged from just engaging with householders, and sometimes they had outreach services like community education, to co-location of services. So if someone came to be helped with, I don't know, health problem or legal problem, there may be someone who could help with energy as well. And then there were unilateral services. But really everything was happening ad hoc. There was no system. Things started, then stopped again, all confusing for householders. So a lot of stuff that could be done on that space to help people. And really capacity building strategies may be needed at individual, community, and sort of institution building scales. Yeah, and that's it.
Thanks so much, Nikki. That was fantastic. I'll just stop the recording and we'll go to questions.